Hello again, and thank you for tuning in to this 7th episode of the Old Code Podcast. I'm your host. I'm trying not necessarily a new, but kind of imposing a structure on on my weekly podcasts. I'm trying to formally test it out. The Monday or Tuesday episode, depending on when it is actually released, is going to be a bit more of a practical application. It's going to be a little bit shorter, to the point. And then the Friday episode will be more of a commentary on stuff going on in the world or culture, something along those lines. So, yeah. With that being said, this is your Monday episode, hoping to start the week off right, and yeah, let's get to it. Today I am talking about rights and privileges versus responsibilities and roles. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because the modern mindset is very much centered around the premise of these are my rights. Particularly Americans were very fixated on this is my right. We have the right to free speech, therefore I can say whatever I want. I have the right to bear arms, so I'm always going to be carrying a weapon just because I want to. We have so many individual and corporate rights, and that's just the way we live our lives. We live in terms of I have the right, and therefore I can and will do something. The following point is then privileges, and in post-modernity, given Marxist influence, privileges speak to power, and privileges speak to, no other way to put it, but a privileged position. It means that you're not being infringed upon. Privilege and infringement typically are at odds with one another. And that's very much frowned upon. If you have privileges, if you have a position of privilege, then you are frowned upon and you are shunned, because that must mean that you're not downtrodden, you're not doing poorly, which must mean that you've downtrodden somebody else to get to where you are right now. Apologize, I have to clear my throat a couple times here. Now, there's nothing wrong with having rights. There's nothing wrong with having privileges. I have known a great many people who have lived very underprivileged lives. My own life has had a distinct lack of certain privileges. I've also known a lot of people who tout and parade their rights and their privileges, and the big thing that I want to focus on with this episode is learning how to recognize the responsibilities inherent to your rights and to your privileges. So a right really is a privilege. It is something which is granted. And in modern America, we have the premise of your rights are given by God and recognized by man. I'm not going to dispute that. I'm not going to advocate for that position. I need more time to think about it. I don't believe certain rights are inalienable and given by God. I don't believe that the right to bear arms is given by God. I think if you want to make an argument for it, since the government has established it and the government is functioning under God's authority, you can make the argument that, yeah, in America, because the government is, according to Romans 12, I think Romans 11 or 12, yeah, you can say that this is something which has been given by God for the betterment of people. That's all. I'm not going to say that biblically we have a right to bear arms. I'm not going to say that biblically we have a right to free speech, but these things are beneficial to society. So in that, yeah, I'm going to say that the ability to speak without the government being tyrannical towards you and censoring you, that's a gift from God. The ability to defend oneself and defend one's family, that's a gift from God. But what comes with gifts always follows responsibilities. So a responsibility is something you are obligated to do. A responsibility is something that you ought to do. Going back to truth, goodness, and beauty, responsibilities bear an oughtness. And so where a right or a privilege stands in the truth portion of our frame, the responsibility falls then into the goodness form of our framework. Which action, when taken into the truth, which is the right/privilege, the responsibility, which is the goodness, action then is the beauty of it. It is the following through. It's when you follow through on the goodness, there is a beautiful element to it. And I think that we should be striving to follow through on more beautiful actualizations of our responsibilities. But that's beside the point. When one has the right to speak freely, you have the responsibility to speak truthfully and graciously. When one has the right to bear arms, you have the responsibility not only to defend oneself, but to defend those who cannot defend themselves. When you have the right to... When you have a given right, you have a responsibility which goes onto it. Me as a husband, I have a great deal of rights in relation to my wife. But I have the responsibility, all of those rights and all of those privileges fall under the responsibility that I also bear. I bear a strong responsibility to care for her and to love her. As a father, as a student, as a worker, I have rights and I have privileges, but I have fundamental responsibilities. And the same thing goes as a citizen. I have responsibilities. I have responsibilities to my fellow man. I have responsibilities to the state, all of the above. But ultimately, these are responsibilities that I bear unto God. I am a firm believer that while the passage is referring to salvation, Christ himself says, "To whom much is given, much will be expected." And so, if you have any sort of special giftings, if you are intelligent, if you are strong, those are privileges, and they bear a responsibility. To whom much is given, much will also be expected. And you are expected to be and to bear those with goodness and grace. Those who are wise, we are responsible to bear with those who have not yet grown in wisdom. For the strong, we bear with the weak. We don't just put up with them, we help them. Our children and with our friends, we don't just laissez-faire, complacently follow through on our duties. We diligently and lovingly follow through, both as friends, as workers, as parents. We ought to carry diligence with our duties. And a duty and a responsibility, I'm basically using them synonymously. But a responsibility, I would say, is more of an unofficial thing, while a duty is something which has been officially placed on you. So evaluate your life. Evaluate where you're at. Genuinely recognize your own giftings. And I think that that's something which, especially menfolk, in today's day and age, we're not exactly always encouraged to do so, is recognize our own strengths and our own special qualities, but recognize them. And once you have recognized them, don't just leave it in a vacuum, but isolate the responsibilities and duties that you then bear in relation to those rights and those privileges. Us men, by and large, we're going to be physically stronger than women. That doesn't mean that we can just throw our weight around. That means we have a responsibility to protect them. Pastors have the right to be paid for their services, but they have a responsibility to tend to their flock. Government workers have a lot of rights and a lot of privileges, but they have ultimate responsibilities, and that is to be ministers to their people. If you are in a position of leadership, you are going to have so many rights and so many privileges, but each one of those comes, like, as far as a leader, your voice is going to mean more. Your voice is going to reach more people. But you have a responsibility to bear that power with wisdom and with humility. Going back to the kingly virtues, you have the responsibility to bear your power with all of those virtues that I've already mentioned. And so, again, I want to circle back to this. You, as the average person listening to this podcast, whoever you are, whether you're a man, you have rights and you have privileges, no matter where you are, no matter who you are. You have privileges and you have rights. If you took a breath today, that's a privilege, that's a gift. So what is the responsibility that follows through on that privilege, on that gift? If you've spoken, if you've traveled freely, that's a right. But where are you going and what are you saying? Those are responsibilities. That's really all I have for today. I hope that you are able to look at everything that you've got going on in your life, every good thing, every opportunity to act, and I want you to evaluate, and I want you to ask yourself how you can bear it with humility and virtue. And then I want you to go and I want you to serve your people well. That's all I got for you today. I really appreciate the response I've been getting so far. Slowly accumulating. I'm looking and watching, people following on, Spotify on the little dashboard that it gives me. And I really appreciate just people actually tuning in to listen to this. Really means a lot, the fact that you guys care and want to hear what I'm saying. So keep spreading it around if you are enjoying this. Text it to a friend. Let other people know if you think of it. I'm not asking you if, to just blindly follow through. But if you like it, if you think of it, if you think there's somebody that that could really benefit or that would enjoy these meditations, just, shoot them a text, give them a call, mention it in conversation. Most of the podcasts that I've tuned into have been because somebody has recommended it through word of mouth. And I'm really trying to avoid the trap of social media, and I'm really trying to avoid playing any of those games. So, in any case, this has been the Old Code Podcast. I'll see you next time.